Night, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Tonight, Dr. Kabir Adamu, CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited, is my guest tonight as we track the destructive impact of banditry in the northern region of Nigeria. Dr. Adamu, thanks a lot for staying with us. You know, in that report, you pointed out the reception of T-129 helicopters from Turkey to enhance counterinsurgency efforts. So help us understand this. Is it really about more equipment and ammunition? Because a report released in August says that the federal government has spent no less than 63.6 billion naira to procure various equipment and ammunition for the Nigerian military and the Office of the National Security Advisor between January and July 2024. Just recently also, the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, is saying that the armed forces of Nigeria requires 200 million rounds of ammunition annually for its operations.
So definitely, the equipment repository of all our security agencies needs to be enhanced. And any effort to procure needed equipment, I must emphasize that, because it's not just any equipment, it must be equipment that would help address specific security challenges. And in this instance, helicopters and other gunboats are necessary in especially the types of security challenges that we have in the country. Close quarter combat and our ability to have monopoly over our airspace will definitely strengthen all types of campaigns that we have, whether it's counter-insurgency, counter-terrorism, or anti-banditry, or even the oil theft. Helicopters and other air platforms would definitely help in that regard. Now, any equipment, including helicopters, that can conduct either exercises that are of an interdiction nature or for surveillance purposes would also be useful. And so in that regard, I think this particular acquisition of helicopters is quite commendable. We need more of such to assist, especially the Air Force and to an extent the Army, and possibly even other security departments at some point to manage some of the threat elements. So yes, I think this is highly commendable. Some other equipment purchases are questionable because, for instance, when you buy certain aircraft for the type of asymmetric warfare that we have in Nigeria, it brings the question on whether we took into consideration the specific requirements of our armed forces or the other security department for purchasing this equipment. But for this particular one, I think it's commendable, and I think it would be really helpful to the armed forces of Nigeria in the implementation of some of the campaigns that are ongoing at the moment.
Absolutely. You know, tonight you've repeatedly talked about technology and surveillance. So the use of technology and satellite monitoring to enhance the regulation and monitoring of mining activities in some states was also highlighted in that report. First, has banning mining helped in any way? And I'm asking because it's exactly a year since the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dele Alake, gave miners engaged in illegal extraction of mineral resources in the country an ultimatum of 30 days to join notable mining cooperatives or face the full wrath of the law. So has this helped?
With all due respect and with a sense of responsibility, no. The reality, and this is what we try to highlight in our report, there are drivers of insecurity in Nigeria, and as long as those drivers are not addressed, then no matter the type of force that is used, it will not solve the challenge. So in this instance, artisanal mining is still ongoing across the country by different players, some of them local, others international. And the reason is because there is a demand for those items. So coming out with a statement, a fiat, saying using the word banning without addressing the root causes, the drivers, which is the access to those minerals, and then the ability of the players, I mentioned local, I mentioned international, to access and continue the mining. And then more importantly, the ability to access markets. So this is one thing that we've not done enough in Nigeria. If you regulate the market and reduce the ability of the bad elements to access that market, then some of these elements will naturally die. In this instance, people are still able to mine these items. You know, is it gold? Is it columbite? Is it all the wealth that we have in Nigeria, the minerals, they're still able to access them, mine them, and they're still able to take them out, either locally or internationally. So yes, the minister has made that statement, but unfortunately the drivers are still there, and so you still have artisanal mining going on.
But Dr. Adamu, from your findings, because I tried to look for it in this document, I couldn't find it. Is there a comprehensive list of legal miners in these states? Do you think a comprehensive data would help reduce the activities of illegal miners in most of the states?
Definitely. And this is what we try to do at Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, to show that data and intelligence can assist in managing security occurrences. In the course of our conversation, I've repeatedly used the word intelligence. Now, your question speaks specifically around intelligence. Knowing the list of illegal miners, the owners of the licenses, the governors that are collaborating with them, because we need to admit that the governors are not happy with the current arrangement, where it's the federal government that issues the licenses, and then they don't have any say, as it were, in determining who comes to mine in their states. So that needs to be changed. And if you have that kind of information that shows who are behind certain elements, in Zamfara State, as an example, mining is still ongoing, and it just takes a little bit of intelligence for you to know who is behind the mining, who have engaged non-state actors to support the mining activities, and then, like I mentioned, where are the markets? It will shock you that at a point, the market was here in Abuja, and in some of the big hotels that are in Abuja, all you needed to do was do a sting operation to say you want to buy gold, and you'll be shocked at where you'll be taken to buy gold here in Abuja. So this is the type of approach that I think we need to take. Again, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited can assist in that regard, in identifying key players, in identifying the markets, and more importantly, in identifying the dynamics that allow these types of things to take place.
So, Dr. Adamu, how soon should this happen for us to have some level of sanity in that sector?
Yesterday, as far as I'm concerned, because this is key to our economy. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the mainstay of the economy, which is oil, is bleeding. So any ability to diversify and raise our revenue generation through other means, including the mining sector, the solid minerals, should have happened yesterday. And we're playing with kid gloves around the issue. The various components of the security department that have responsibility for intelligence, I think, need to take it more seriously. And I think this is a wake-up call for the minister to engage with them and try to get them to conduct in-depth intelligence collection of the various elements that I've mentioned that are responsible for the artisanal mining and the selling of, as it were, illegally mined activities. I mentioned international players. It's well documented. And I think customs, too, would need to play a role in that regard, as well as, to an extent, even the federal fund, Airport Authority of Nigeria.
So if I'm to go by your words, Dr. Adamu, you say that Nigeria's security landscape has been further complicated by a series of safety concerns. So from this report, this includes transportation accidents, including on road and water bodies, the outbreak of diseases such as monkeypox. But in this report, you focused on widespread flooding, severe weather conditions characterized by intense rainfall, you say has resulted in widespread flooding. So this natural disaster has had devastating consequences. Would you say that generally most of the national policies and programs pertaining to food security do not account for how flooding can impact food security negatively?
Unfortunately, no. And I think the last I think it was the Federal Executive Council meeting, which I think we referred to in that report, which took into consideration that development and then ordered an audit of our dams, kind of admitted to that. But I think, I believe that more should have been done. We have a Ministry of Environment, we have the Ecological Fund, we have also different components of our governance structure. Monies usually in our budget expended for different things. I think that the question should have arisen on why those components in government did not do what they were supposed to do. Even simple awareness raising and sensitization to allow people to understand.
Dr. Adamu, pardon me, when you say more needs to be done, who should be doing what? And nothing governors doing enough.
Frankly, no, they need to do more. They are players in that regard. They are also victims in terms of that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about implementing adaptation measures against climate change. And then some very basic things. People who are living in areas that are susceptible to flooding, certain governors have been proactive in terms of identifying those places and then moving them from those places. Allocating, better suited land and supporting them in terms of developing those land with infrastructure and sometimes even some funds to build in those locations. And then, of course, drainages, making sure drainages are built, the integrity of dams, which may be the responsibility of the federal government. And then, like I was saying, even basic awareness of the consequences of climate change and the need to introduce adaptation measures would be something that I say the Ministry of Environment and a few other players, including Ministry of Finance, should have invested in, so that as a country, we recognize that things have changed. Climate change is already here with us. There will be variation in terms of rainfall and perhaps even in terms of the quantity. And then, of course, some of the other natural factors like the integrity of our dams that I've mentioned earlier on. And a few other factors would lead to more flooding. But we need to be ready. We can't wait until it happens. We need to be proactive. And, governors can play huge roles in that regard. But it must be a joint effort between all the stakeholders, the federal government, the state government, and to an extent, even our development partners. I think places like the World Bank, the United Nations are also doing a lot. Several intervention programs that are being supported by the World Bank and some of our development partners are also trying to address this issue of flooding. But it must be a stakeholder approach, multi-stakeholder.
But beyond the northern region of this country, I want us to talk generally now about the security implication of climate change, like flooding. How critical is this for a country like Nigeria? When you look at loss of lives, displacement of millions of individuals, extensive damage to properties and infrastructure, and a significant impact on agricultural productivity.
It's critical. The consequences, honestly, can only be understood if you look at the far-reaching and wide-reaching consequences. There is no sector that may not be affected by the flooding. Health, public health is affected. Infrastructure is being destroyed. Food security is being affected. Name them. Business operations. There are several parts of the country at the moment, including places like Kogi and others that are currently inaccessible as a result of flooding. So the impact is really huge. And we must acknowledge and admit that this is a phenomenon that has come to stay. It's not something that we can wish away. So again, adaptation measures. There is a lot of technology at the moment that allows us to look at our environment and then introduce those adaptation measures to reduce the impact. We can't fight nature. So the best we can do is to introduce adaptation measures to reduce the impact of climate change. And the earlier we start doing that, the better for us. It's still shocking that some of the environmental degradation, environmental destruction that increases our vulnerability is still being done. Our rocks are still being destroyed. Forests are still being felled. Name them. The dumping of refuse in our drainages are still ongoing at the moment. Sadly, these are some of the consequences that are resulting in the flooding that we're seeing at the moment.
Right. I want to talk about cybersecurity issues, which was also highlighted in your reports. But before then, would you say a lot of gain had been made against insurgency in the Northeast? If you look at Bauchi State, Gombe, Taraba, and Yobe, or there was just a desperate attempt by the governors to create that image of normalcy?
No, definitely. The Northeast is, we've seen great improvement in the Northeast. Part of the reasons is that I mentioned at the beginning that a counter-terrorism strategy is being implemented. And then this, in particular, the most affected state, Borno State, introduced what is called the Borno model that has allowed local population to key into that national counterterrorism strategy. And so we're seeing tremendous successes in that regard. It's not yet Uhuru. There are still active groups, non-state armed groups, terrorist groups that are active in those locations. The Jamaat al-Ahli al-Jawat wal-Jihad and the Islamic State in West Africa province, they're still active. But if you compare to what used to be and where we are at the moment, tremendous progress has been achieved. In the report, we did highlight a particular incident that happened in Yobe State, where these groups that I mentioned, in a reprisal attack, killed about 90 people in just one attack. So there are still instances of such heinous attacks, but the frequency and the lethality of those attacks have reduced tremendously compared to what it used to be. If you look at the percentage that the Northeast represent, it's much lower both in terms of abduction and fatality than the Northwest and North Central. So at the moment, the epicenter of security challenges in Nigeria is the Northwest. The Northeast has been overtaken by the Northwest.
So, Dr. Adamu, your report also covered cybersecurity issues, including Google Chrome vulnerability exploited by cyber attackers, just as you put it. So for Nigeria, experts say Nigeria is more prone to cyber attacks than any other developing nation in the world. And it's the fact that it's one of the most unregulated, most dangerous space that portends some of our greatest national security challenges is the cyberspace. Evaluation of our Cybersecurity Act, how else can we protect our cyberspace?
There are several factors. I think the Cybersecurity Act is a good development. However, its implementation and then making sure we raise the awareness of the public. Just before I came onto this program, I received a WhatsApp message, which I'm sure a lot of Nigerians received on a daily basis. So it came from someone in my contact, and it went something like, I'm unable to pay money using my bank app. Please help me pay 200,000 into a particular account. I'm sure you've probably received this in the past, or some of our listeners at the moment have done that. The moment I saw that, I know the person's WhatsApp number has been hacked, and the effrontery of writing and providing a bank account through which these monies are collected is part of the challenges. So I think raising awareness, because a lot of people will actually fall victim. They will go ahead and pay that money, and the criminals will go and cash in and collect their money. But when we raise awareness for people to really understand, and then there are some very simple things that you can do to increase the protection.
So how do we continue to raise awareness, Dr. Adamu?
By engaging with the public and by sending out messages, especially in the social media. The two-factor authentication, as an example, most people don't even know this. Something as basic as that, just two-factor authentication. Whatever cyber platform that you belong to, just simply activate your two-factor authentication. So even when there's an attempt to hack that particular platform, if you have a two-factor authentication in the place, it makes it extremely difficult. The person will have to have access to that other platform that you've combined with that one for him to do that. And it's almost impossible or difficult for that to happen. So that's really number one. And number two is to allow experts to do their work, especially for corporate organizations. We, as a country, we haven't invested enough in the cyberspace. You see companies who are using the cyberspace, but they are reluctant to invest in cybersecurity. The more we move into the cyberspace, the more criminals move there. So the same way you're investing in physical security, you have to invest in cybersecurity so that you protect yourself and you protect your clients. And then, of course, thirdly, is the role of government. The Cyber Act is very clear. We need to have a robust and strong regulatory presence within the cyberspace. And I don't want to get mad in the politics of who should control it, but we need to have it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Kabir Adamu, CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited, as we go through this report together. And I must say that this is a well-detailed report, and thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.